Welcome into another edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. We are back from Oregon, and while the Pacific Northwest is a beautiful area of the country, Purdue's performance on Saturday night in Corvallis did not match the scenery, unfortunately. We'll tie a bow on Boilers and Beavers, and we're going to look forward to another opponent coming off a loss in the Cornhuskers of Nebraska. That's for homecoming this Saturday at Ross-Ade Stadium. But first, a thank you to our sponsors. That list includes Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler Up, East End Grill, and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. And the Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Joining me now is somebody that I actually got to meet in person. I'm kind of embarrassed to say I've known of Tom, and I've known of Tom's work forever, as has any good college football fan here in the great United States of America is familiar with his work. And I never had the chance to actually meet him in person until we were up in the press box at Reeser Stadium in Corvallis. So, Tom, it was great to meet you. Like I kind of told you, everything about that trip was great except for the actual result, the 3 hours on Saturday night, I feel like.
Yeah, like I say, Derek, reminds me of college. I always said college was great aside from those classes. And, Oregon was great aside from that 3 hour window we had to watch a football game.
Obviously, Tom, I was going to say the Notre Dame defeat, it falls in its own category, right? It's historic, 66-7. It'll stick around for a while. But as far as just how much it actually stung, could you actually argue that the Oregon State defeat is worse simply for the opportunity cost of losing that game and now what it means for the rest of the season?
That's a good point. I think you may be onto something there, Derek. There was that great opportunity against Notre Dame, but that result happens. It's catastrophic, worst loss in school history. Now you got a chance to circle the wagons, go on the road, to play an opponent that I think we can all agree Purdue has more talent, obviously more resources. Back against the wall, Derek, and got off to a great start. And then they had that fumble in the red zone, that muffed exchange between Card and Mockabee. That just sort of was a portent of things to come, wasn't it? So, I think I agree with you. I think in many ways that Oregon State loss, even though it wasn't by the same margin, was maybe even more hurtful and damaging on many levels than what we saw against the Irish here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and I just feel like they really lost the game in that first quarter because you have the go for it on the first drive by Trent Bray, and they're being aggressive. Purdue gets the stop. They're in almost a goal-to-goal situation, and it's if it's Card, if it was Mockabee, who knows? But I don't remember if it was Mockabee or Love, but they do the handoff, and then the ball's on the ground, and suddenly Oregon State takes over. And then that weird fluky interception where it's off a leg, it's off a knee, it's off a face, it's off an elbow, and then it's right into an Oregon State defender running in stride to the end zone. I'm not going to fault them for that, but Oregon State is not the type of team that you want to be trailing by 10 points to. And that's essentially where Purdue had to live for the entirety of that game.
Yeah, that's what Purdue needed to do. We talked about that in the lead-up, was get a lead and use your ground game, right? Keep it away from Oregon State, which we all know wants to ground and pound you with those two running backs and even its quarterback. And the script was flipped. Oregon State got to play that role. And boy, Derek, did they ground and did they pound. The second week in a row, Purdue gave up over 300 yards rushing. So they haven't had that happen 3 games in a row since 2016. Fingers are crossed here in West Lafayette. Here comes the Big Red for homecoming. And again, I've got my hands in the air, Derek. I'm not sure what to expect. Everybody's saying all the right things, but will we actually see results on Saturday? We'll see.
Yeah, and Nebraska coming off a loss, and they're going to be hurting too. Another kind of wounded opponent, kind of like Oregon State was, kind of like Notre Dame was. It's been kind of the common theme this year. Purdue catching opponents off of a loss, and they're sharp and they're ready. And Oregon State, I think, was ready, and they had a great home crowd, and they put it to them. Looking at the box score, the rush offense, at least on paper, looked like it. I think the problem, Tom, is that even though Purdue had all of the rushing yards, what they didn't have was sustained drives. Oregon State was sustaining drives, converting third downs. And even if they were coming in 8, 10, 12-yard chunks and not like a 60-yard breakaway like what Mockabee had in that game, it just felt like a much more effective offensive rhythm than what Purdue was able to do. And we can get into the passing game as well. But 56 passing yards on the road, that's just not going to cut it.
Yeah, I think you saw Oregon State demonstrate that ability right before the end of the first half. Remember that?
Yeah.
Purdue had the ball. Looks like they can maybe go in for a score to end the half. Well, they give the ball back to Oregon State, and the Beavers marched right down the field and scored, converted a couple of third downs along the way. So, yeah, I think there's plenty of culpability when you want to start pointing fingers as to what went wrong when you look at the Purdue roster and coaching staff and the inability to sustain drives. I think Purdue was like 2 of 9 on third downs. I want to say Oregon State was 7 of 14. There you go, right there, right? The money down. That's the money down, Derek. And Ryan Walters always talks about playing complementary football. And the offense doing its part, the defense doing its part. And the defense, Derek, you pointed out, did its part, I think, in the first half pretty well, got a couple fourth down stops. Offense didn't pick them up. And I think the defense, I'm not making excuses, but I did think it got worn down there by always being thrown back out on the field. And, boy, they were gashed. But, again, they could have done better, Derek. They still really struggled to consistently set the edge. Oregon State kind of knew how to exploit that defense, it seemed like, and certainly took advantage of. And often those guys were running free on the edge with the speed option and just a conventional 1970s option, too, Derek. Purdue looked totally flummoxed by that.
Yeah, and Oregon State, the plays. I mean, they ran 28 more plays. Notre Dame the week before that ran 22 more plays. I mean, Tom, that's 50 more plays in 2 weeks. That's a full game worth of plays, essentially, that Purdue's opponent has had over them in the last 2 weeks.
You know what's funny is I thought when this season, before it even dawned, Derek, I said, you know what, the offense is going to be the strength of this team. Hasn't happened. I thought the defense hasn't been lights out, but it's had its issues, but it's been better to a degree than the offense. The offense has been a very, very big disappointment. I'll be honest with you. Where are the playmakers? Now they don't have their two top receivers. It didn't last week. Jamal Edrin was announced out prior to kickoff, arguably the number one receiver. Of course, C.J. Smith hasn't played all year. Nobody else stepped up, Derek. I think only 4 receivers caught passes. Max Clare led him with 2 catches. There was no yak to speak of. On and on it goes. So again, the offense has just been a real disappointment. I thought we'd see more. I think the line's had its moments, but they've had struggles too. But I think it's better. But I don't know. This is when Graham Harrell and company really earn their money, Derek.
Can they steer Hudson Card back? Because he had a great ending to the season, and then he opens the debut with basically a perfect game. I know it's against Indiana State, but still, I don't care if you're throwing against there. 24 of 25 is pretty great. And then maybe he gave him a little bit of pass for Notre Dame last week because he was constantly under pressure. But, the passing game, and I get that the wide receiver room, like there are a lot, like you said, there's a lot of blame to go around, but it's just not a level right now that I think this offense can live with.
Yeah, we'll see. We talked to Ryan Walters on Monday at the press conference. He talked about huddling up with Hudson Card, talking to him specifically this week. And he didn't. He was asked for details, and of course he didn't divulge them. I got the sense maybe there's going to be some new wrinkles. He said he was eager to see what it looked like in practice on Tuesday. So you can't reinvent the wheel on the fly. Certainly, you are what you are to a degree. We're only, the season's rolling, right? You can't rebuild a car when you're driving it, but you can make tweaks and changes and alterations, and maybe we see like the pistol formation. I don't know. Maybe there's some small things they can do schematically to try to put them in a better position for more consistent success. And like you said, Derek, to keep drives going and to convert on third downs.
We'll touch a little bit on Nebraska here in just a second, but wanted to thank one of our other sponsors today of Gold and Black Radio. It's our friends at Sand Valley Resort. Celebrate all that the wilderness provides this fall and winter at Sand Valley. Experience everything from Thanksgiving dinner to curling and ice hockey to ice fishing, snowshoeing, even the restorative benefits of a guided cold plunge in the frozen lake. Start planning your next winter getaway by visiting sandvalleypursuits.com. Tom, you mentioned Ryan Walters talked to the media earlier today. I know we're taping this a little bit later in the day than we usually do. What did he have to say? First off, just an injury update as they head into homecoming week against the Cornhuskers.
Well, he did have good news about their cornerback, Nyland Green from Georgia. He's going to play. He expects him to play, Derek, was the word he used, were expected to play. And I was over at practice today doing some interviews post-practice. And number 2, Nyland Green was out there doing some post-practice work with the cornerbacks coach. So I think we'll see him out. He's a big corner, Derek. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. The kind of guy Purdue could not have gotten out of high school, but they get via the portal. 6'1", 200-pound kid. So we'll see. They're going to have him out there paired opposite Markevius Brown, Derek Rogers, who of course didn't even make the trip last week, he's going to be available too. So that's more depth at cornerback, especially again getting the number one corner, the presumed number one cornerback on the field for the first time in 2024 in Nyland Green. Talked about the receivers. They're out still, C.J. Smith and Jamal Edrin. He's talked about Slim Turner Muhammad maybe being out. But as far as the main players go, Derek, those are the names to know: Nyland Green, C.J. Smith, and Jamal Edrin. I don't anticipate anybody of real importance being out, but you never know, right? Until we see that availability report on Saturday.
I know they kind of keep these things in-house when the team is going through it, as Purdue seems to be doing right now. But did Ryan Walters seem to be the same as he usually is, or how is he kind of handling things after this 1-2 non-conference start in your eyes?
He's pretty consistent. Pretty consistent. I'll give him credit, Derek. I don't know if I could do it.
It'd be tough. It's a lot of pressure.
You got to face the music, and you're paying a lot of money. And to whom much is given, much is expected. I was always told. But yeah, he's been pretty consistent. When you get a day or two away from something, you tend to soften your views a little bit. And he got a chance to look at the film. Even on the plane, he talked about watching the film on the plane coming back, and he saw some positive things even at that point on the flight back to West Lafayette. It wasn't all doom and gloom was his point. And he knows they have work to do. And he talked about, somebody brought up, hey, do you realize that Purdue's one of only two teams that has yet to have a takeaway this year? He goes, I'm well aware. So, and I asked him too, right off the top, how do you deal with all the outside noise and keep tunnel vision? He said he stays off social media for the most part, doesn't read things unless it pertains to recruiting. So God bless him, man. It's hard to ignore social media, and things are being said about you. I think he has a sense of what's being said, right? He knows. I'm sure it fuels him. But yeah, otherwise, I think he seemed pretty normal to me on Monday. Derek.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good rule of thumb, either good or bad, to just stay off of it, right? Because you don't want to hear everybody pumping you up either, because then it gets to your head. So. I can kind of understand it from both ways. Early impressions of Nebraska. Obviously, we're going to get way more in depth with the Cornhuskers on Friday's show, but coming off a loss, but still they've got a lot of talent, and Matt Rule seems to finally be pushing that program forward after either being a neutral or kind of spinning their wheels here for the last decade or so.
Big time coach, Derek. NFL, Temple, Baylor. He's been there and done that. I think we can all agree they're going to have an advantage when it comes to the sideline, right? I don't think that's unfair to say. Second year in the program, like Ryan Walters, a lot of excitement out there. I've talked to some people already this week from Lincoln, some media members, and they were disappointed by that loss, obviously, last week on Friday night to Illinois. But it's an offense. This is going to be their first trip on the road with a true freshman quarterback. They've got their adversity coming off a loss. You mentioned that too. I just mentioned that. So we'll see. I think they got good balance on offense, Derek. The defense has been vulnerable against the run. Illinois took advantage of them and wore them down last week. Northern Iowa in the opener saw some things, was able to run the ball on them. We'll see if Purdue can exploit them in the run game. But it's going to be a heck of a challenge, right? It's a proud program. It hasn't been to a bowl. Can you believe this? Has not been to a bowl in this era of bowl excess since 2016. That's a stunner, man. But anyway, they got their sense of urgency, and they were disappointed. So they're going to come in loaded for bear to face Purdue team over here, not far from where I'm at right now. The place should be packed for homecoming, and everybody's hoping for a better outcome for the Boilers as far as those sitting in the seats there.
You and I, Tom, are old enough to remember where it wasn't a question if Nebraska was going to make a bowl. It was, is it going to be the Orange Sugar Fiesta? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it was automatic, man.
Juggernaut, man.
They were a contender every single year. The Tommy Frazier era, and then even into the, Eric Crouch and the last of the Osborne teams before things started to kind of
Frank
fade
Sola.
away.
Yeah, he was rolling too. So yeah, you're right. A proud program, a program that probably lives in the past a little bit, like me, Derek. Probably lives in the past too much, and still looks in the mirror and thinks it's 25 years old with a 32-inch waist and a 42-inch chest or whatever. It's not 1995 anymore for Nebraska, but you know what? I love Nebraska because of how they embrace their sports out there, man.
Yeah,
volleyball, every sport they love. You're a rock star in Nebraska. Great passion. So I really always tip my hat to that fan base. It'd be a great place to be a football star, Derek. You are worshipped out there, buddy. You are worshipped.
Yeah, they've been a great fit for the Big Ten, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that vibe aligns with how Iowa and Ohio State and Indiana and Purdue fans, I think, treat their teams as well. So
Yeah.
it's been nice to see, but yeah, they've been down for a while, but let's see. Maybe they're starting to come back up here under Matt Rule. We'll get more into that on Friday, Tom. So until then, we will talk to you in a couple days. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Derek.
That's Tom Dienhart of goldandblack.com. You can, of course, check out his analysis, as always, if you're a subscriber at goldandblack.com. And we'll be back with more on Friday for another edition of Gold and Black Radio. Thanks once again to our great sponsors that make this show possible every week. The Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans. East End Grill and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn, the Midwestern oasis, perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. And Sand Valley Resort. Celebrate all that the wilderness provides this fall and winter at Sand Valley. Start planning your next winter giveaway by visiting sandvalleypursuits.com. Next edition of Gold and Black Radio will be at full tilt. Not only Tom, but Brian Newbert, Alan Karpick will get an historical look back now that Purdue and Nebraska, I think, have played enough, being both part of the old Big Ten West, to look back on some of those matchups and have a lot of fun breaking down what's going to be homecoming week and a full crowd at Ross-Ade. I know things aren't going great for the program right now, but certainly the fan support is going to be there, and it should be a great atmosphere for a noon kick in West Lafayette. Thanks again to Tom for his time, and thanks for listening to Gold and Black Radio today. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and we will see you next time on Friday